Alright, Melody lives 30 miles due south of her cousin's house and 40 miles due west of her grandparents' house. One day she drove to her cousin's house in a straight line from her grandparents' house. How far did she drive? Melody drove blank miles. So enter the value that fills in the blank in the previous sentence. If necessary, round your answer to 2 decimal places like this. So we have, they drew it for us. Melody is right here. And she is 30 miles due south, so straight down from her cousin's house, and 40 miles due west of her grandparents' house. So they want to know if she drove from her cousin's house in a straight line to her grandparents' house. How far is that length? So the first question I'm going to ask myself is this a right triangle? If it is, yes. Then the next thing I'm going to ask myself, okay, the reason it is a right triangle is because the directions, north, east, south, and west, are all 90 degrees. So this being due south and due west, that created a 90 degrees. So it was like, here's her cousin's house driving due south, and here's her grandparents' house driving due west, and this is where she would meet. So it is a right triangle, and the next question I'm going to ask myself is, what am I solving for? So I'm solving for a side length CG. I represented it by X. So since I'm looking for side lengths, so side lengths can be found by 2 ways since we have a right triangle. The first way it could be found is the Pythagorean theorem. Well, one of the ways, I won't say the first way. We have the Pythagorean theorem and the trigonometric functions, or trig functions. So for the trig functions, in order to use it, we have to have 2 known angles. So a 90-degree angle and 1 other, and 1 side length. For the Pythagorean theorem, we have to know 2 known side lengths. So if I'm looking back through this, I see no other angles, angle C or angle G, so I'm not going to use the trig functions. And then I'm going to ask, okay, well, do I have enough information to use the Pythagorean theorem? I have a 30-mile side length and a 40-mile side length, so yes. So we're going to set up the Pythagorean theorem. And the Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared is going to equal c squared. So now I have to know what a, b, and c is. The critical one is that c is the hypotenuse. The other 2 are just the side lengths, and they could be labeled whatever they are. So A and B represent the other 2 side lengths. So then, if I were to look at this, the hypotenuse is always across from the 90-degree angle, so this is technically C, little c. Either of these, doesn't matter the order, A and B. So now I'm going to use this equation, and I'm going to use substitution. A is 40 miles. Little b is 30 miles, or side length b. And side length c, I represented it by x, so I'm just going to substitute x in. Okay, so now the first thing that I'm looking for is we're going to solve for x, and I'm going to ask myself, is x alone on its side of the equal sign? So this right here, no, it's not. It is being squared. So since x is being squared, I use the inverse operation. Most people call it opposite operation. It's the inverse operation, which is the square root. So we would take this and we would square root both sides. So then that would give us a new equation. We would have the square root of 40 squared and the square root of 40 squared. Sorry, this is not letting me use my shorthand. 40 squared plus 30 squared is going to equal that's going to equal, well, the square root of x squared is x. I'm not sure what I'm doing or what I pushed. Okay, the square root of x squared is x. So now I ask, is x alone on its side of the equal sign again? Yes. So now I have to figure out what the square root of 40 squared plus 30 squared is. So we use calculator. Square root of 40 squared plus 30 squared, and that is going to equal 50. So we have 50 is equal to x. So on this, Melody drove 50 miles. So when you enter your answer, you would type in 50. Hope that helps.